What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jay, and this is the Jay Sinky channel. And guys, you know what tonight is, right? Tonight is another Talkin' Tackle. And the tackle that we're gonna be talking about is actually gonna be flippin', pitchin'. What's the other word? Flippin' and pitchin'. You know, basically, we're gonna be talking about flippin' and pitchin'. And tonight, the special guest that we're gonna be having is Mr. Mikey Balls. It's okay. All right, so here we are again, guys, to another Talkin' Tackle, and tonight our guest that we have is Mr. Mikey. Is it Balls?
Wow, really? That's the part you're gonna focus on?
I know. I'm sorry. It's okay. I have one of those weird last names. You know, a lot of people think my last name is Sink, and it's Sinky. So I always try to like respectfully get it right.
So, actually, I'll tell you this. That's actually not my last name.
See, I didn't know that. I wondered, and I was like, am I really? I honestly sat here and I was like, am I gonna make kind of a fool of myself if I, ask about it? I thought about that.
Dude, if my name was Balls, I would have been like heckled as a child.
I thought,
it's funny because we had this rap group when we were in high school, which we never rapped, but we made up like names for each other.
Yeah.
And mine was like all one, and that's the other thing. It's all one word, Mikey Balls. Like
Mikey Balls. Okay, there we go. I thought that was it. Just wanted to make sure.
I can get a freaking an account, and everybody's gonna steal my accounts now, but I can get an account on any platform, any social media platform, anywhere, and it's not like Mikey Balls 1. It's like Mikey Balls. Like
right.
It's freaking easy. So I can get an email. I got all kinds of bogus emails.
That's how I feel about because it's mine is my name, and nobody ever has that one, so it's like that's easy enough as it is. It's like cut and paste right there, but. Now I feel kind of foolish, but that's okay. It's the fun in the actual video. This is why I'm not doing live yet. If I wanted to, I could edit this out, but I'm not going to.
Live can get degenerate pretty quick. I'll give you that.
All right. So tonight we talked about it. We're going to be talking about the punching rig. But before we get there, we were just talking about before I started recording about. You said Hammonds. It's apparently in some place right down.
Yeah, you were telling me you live in Georgia. So Hammonds is actually.
Your camera looks like it lost a little focus.
Yeah, it totally did, and I don't know what happened.
All right, that's interesting. There you go. There's there you go. Oh
no.
Yeah, weird. I wonder what's going on with that. It's like if you get you like got to be in a certain. I don't know.
No, it was fine before.
Right. I don't know. Weird. It's not want to like focus in on your
what the fuck?
The fun errors.
Yeah. I was literally on 2 podcasts live streams last week, and I had no problem with it.
Just my luck. I think it's looking
all right, so here's what I'm gonna do real quick.
Okay.
I'm gonna disappear from a video standpoint and probably everything. And if you lose me, so just hit stop. I'm gonna unplug and come back in, okay?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. That's funny. All right. So now we got you back in focus. Okay. All right. So a place called Hammonds you were talking about.
Yeah. So you were telling me you live in Georgia. So every year I run the Gambler Free Tournaments on Lake Lanier. And that happens usually in April. This year, I think it's April 2nd. So if anybody wants to come out and hang out, come on. Lanier is one of, obviously I'm Florida people, but I've sort of like adopt lakes as I move up here. I love Lanier. Like love it. Like it is so stupid. I love catching spots. But Hammonds is owned by Tim Hawkins, who's been kind of like my spotted bass mentor, and he's the coolest, most down-to-earth dude. Will teach you all kinds of stuff, and he has one of the most sick, in a good way, epic shops in Georgia, if not like the Southeast. It's like this log cabin looking awesome place. And dude, when it comes to tackle, they have like everything from like your normal brand busters, your Berkeley, your standard stuff, to like some crazy shit. Like he gave me this sweet bait swim bait, which is like a multi-jointed herring imitator, and it's like $100. It's freaking crazy to like you can burn it as fast as you can and swim. But they got cool stuff, and they actually have live bait, which is one of the coolest things. They have live herring, live shad, and minnows, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But they got these huge tanks though, dude, and you can go back and you can watch the herring ball up and stuff.
Nice.
It's super cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pop by there. I haven't actually been to Lanier in a few years, honestly, just because I've been, with just how the world's gone and the way it's been. It's just been easier popping around the ponds and doing that. But yeah, I've been actually talking about wanting to go up to Lanier. I'm possibly going to attempt one of those bass slams that Georgia has here where you catch. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's where well, I want to attempt one of those, and I figured Lanier might be a good place to hit it up, hit a couple of them. I would like to figure out where the smallies are hiding, but they're very limited here in Georgia. So
smallies are going to be hard. You probably got, and yeah, you can't go out of state. You can definitely knock off. Is the striper a part of the slam?
I don't think so.
It's just spots, largemouth, shoal bass.
There's like a Swanee bass. There's like 10 of them, and they're like different ones.
You gotta go way south to catch a Swanee. Yeah, because that's practically Florida stuff down there.
Right. So, and it'd be cool to catch some of the like different ones. So I'd like to attempt one of those this year, I'd like to attempt it this year. That'd be cool. So I got to get up to Lanier and some other lakes. I'm talking to a buddy of mine who's got a boat, and it'd be cool to kind of get that out there just to put because they give you a whole like name and every like a plaque or something, just kind of acknowledgement in a sense, but it's just kind of going to be something fun for an adventure too. But
it's bad. That's one of my favorite things about moving up from Florida is catching all the different ones. Like literally there's one place that I go to, I can on the same spot catch a smallmouth, a largemouth, and a spot.
See, that's so cool. Yeah.
That's badass. Like that is freaking cool.
So, yeah, I want that. That'd be cool. That. Yeah. And they typically go after like a lot of the same baits. It really depends, but you could probably target on more, but I don't know. I'm more known with just largemouth. I haven't actually caught any other bass, so this is just all hearsay.
Like the spots you can use. I've found with spots, there's so many different because usually you're catching those spots in more open water, Yes, they get shallow and you catch them cranking in that. But when you get like offshore spots, literally you can catch them on anything. But that doesn't mean like you'll catch them all the time, on anything. But like I guess the amount or the amount of lures you can use for spots when they're offshore like that is insane. Like
that's cool.
They eat anything. And all kinds of weird little tiny stuff that's kind of fun.
I've heard. Yeah. See, I haven't done enough research, but that's something I definitely need to look more into. All right, before we get too off topic, let's get into the punching and is flipping and punching, is it the same thing or where is it different?
I ballpark it as the same stuff. So there's going to be some people in the comments that are going to be like, bruh, flipping isn't punching. Flipping is when you lift the line, But the reality is like it's jargon, for fishing. So flipping, punching, pitching is
pitching,
all kind of in the old days. But like it's all kind of generically the same in the sense that from a short distance, you're targeting some kind of heavier or like emergent or submergent cover, pretty much. Like there's a thing, it's close to you, you're either putting your bait near it, in it, or around it. Like it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. So like this is actually something these are one of those things I don't know much about. There's I'm limited. I don't know if I've ever really gone out and considered when I've gone actually punching. I know you have to use a heavier weight. Now you go out on lakes mainly, yeah?
Yeah.
So what would you?
I'm on rivers, lakes, because like there are a lot of impoundments, So the TVA is like one giant river, but there's chunks of lakes in between it. So but yeah, it's usually a heavier weight, but not always. So that's kind of the interesting thing because there's really two ways to think about punching. Either you're going like in and you're trying to get through, or like kind of like down inside something, or you're kind of relying, and that's how you get your bite, the reaction. Falling through. Or you're kind of focusing on that slow fall and trying to get as much out of that fall, because that initial drop, that's kind of the deal. It's sort of a yay or nay deal. Like you put your bait in a place and it's freaking in there for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 second, 2 seconds, and you either get bit and you're moving on, or nothing happens whatsoever. It's very nothing or something.
Right. So a lot of the times when I see it on boats specifically, you see the guys riding on their boat and they're just kind of throwing it towards the bank. And so that's like the main kind of thing. I have to practice that. See, I fish from the bank, so I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure it's possible.
I've actually flipped from the bank. It's tricky because you got to find stuff that's a little ways out, but at the same time you can access it. So it's tricky. A lot of times back in the day when I would pond fish, like we do a lot of like side flipping. So say for instance, you're on the bank, right? And there's like a tree fall right here that's laying into the water and sticking out like freaking 25 feet. So like I would literally kind of like skip pitch my bait like to the side and kind of work my way across it. And that's how I did a lot of flipping from the bank back in the day.
That's when I attempt to try to, when there's a down tree, I feel like that's, you know, one of the things that, you know, I'm not sure if you know Debo or anything like that, but Debo's always said, you know, find wood, pitch to wood. That's one of those things, you know, and that's a famous saying, I'm sure, across the board, but that's the one that I hear in my head when it comes to that, because he's a bank angler too. So he's like, you know, when you find the wood, pitch to it. And it's just kind of exactly what you just said. You go around it and you pitch on like the outskirts of it, because essentially when the tree's down, it's like the branches are out like that, and you're going right around it, kind of.
And hell, you can even do it like a lot of bank anglers. I know back in the day, like I'd run into like bridge pilings, you know, stuff like that, where you have like artificial objects. Like the reality is that fall is what gets the bite. And if you have like a pylon for a bridge or for anything, you know, it's a vertical structure. So those fish will relate to kind of like the size, the shape, or something like that. And you can do the same approach. So you can kind of get on a bridge and go flick like right under to those pilings or along those sides. So it's very, like anything in fishing, it's as far and as deep as you want to get into it is where it can go. You know, there's really no rules, only the rules you put on yourself.
Okay. So as far as, you know, when it comes to you and your preference, as far as, you know, your pitching, what is your preference on weight? What is your preference there?
So it's all over the place.
Okay.
If we're talking about punching, usually punching is like 3/4 ounce and up. Because the goal with punching, it's, you know, you're punching,
get it through,
get inside or through something. So I'll use weights. I've used stuff up to like 1.5, 2 ounces even. The one shortfall that you find though, especially when you're like flipping mats, which is basically like a canopied kind of cover. So you have like hydrilla that's going out, or you have floating cover. With those bigger weights, they allow you to get through. But what oftentimes happens is the weight actually knocks the hook out of the fish. So you'll pitch in there, they're trying to get through,
and they use it to their advantage.
Exactly. They flop around and that weight hits that hook and knocks it out. So it's this fine line of having enough weight to get through, but not lose fish.
Not too heavy.
As light as 1/4 ounce, like 1/8 of an ounce, you know, because in a sense you can pitch like we talk like a stick bait, you know, that's one of the most fish catching lures out there. Well, hell, you can take a weightless stick bait or a stick bait with a 32nd or a 16th, and say you're in 2 foot of water, 1.5 foot water, super shallow. You don't want to make much of a splash. Well, if you're pitching that to a target, to a cover, it's the same thing. You're flipping, you're pitching, you know?
Okay.
So same thing, but you've gone a lot lighter because you don't need that weight to punch on through, and you want to deliver that bait in a quieter way.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what kind of, like, my next thought process is, now, do you use a peg when you're considering when you're punching? You use a peg. Most people do, I assume, but
100%,
okay.
100%.
And what kind of hooks are you using?
You're trying to hit a very specific target. And if that weight is slipping, oftentimes your delivery. So usually I'm pitching to like a square foot, you know, I'm going to drop my bait in a specific place. If that weight slips, if you deliver it there, that weight might go down, but that bait might drag back, or you might get some kind of like weird glide. And really, I want that bait exactly where it's going. Hook wise varies. And really, so punching mats, straight shank hook. 100%.
Straight shank, okay.
Straight shank hook, something just like, not like that, but just like this. I run it's a Strike King Hack Attack. So it's this guy right here. It's a straight shank hook. It's got a little bit of a keeper. Let me rip that joker off. It's got a little bit of a keeper on it. And I also snell that on there. The reason you do that is just for this. So basically what happens is when that snell is on there, you see how that hook is kicking, like when the weight hits it. So I put pressure on it and it kicks up. So what it allows you to do is really, a lot of guys like to set the hook real hard, which is just fine, but I like to, it's not being nice to the fish, but you don't need to, basically. You don't got to jack the face. And when you're using braid for punching like that, punching through those heavy mats, you're also using a pretty heavy rod. I run a 710 Halo XD, or this is a TI, but it's heavy action. So you got a lot of rod. So really your hook set is just kind of like a sweep. And
you're just knocking the questions out for me on that one. You're telling me the rod, the line, and everything. So what weight of braid do you typically use? Because you said you use braid, which is one of the questions I was going to ask.
Not across the board, I won't use braid. Like if we're talking
Okay.
about pitching trees, so braid I'll use around grass. If I have
Okay.
really thick grass, sometimes if the water's dirty, I'll use it around wood because you get such sensitivity, right? Like it's
Right.
super tough. But the trick with braid is when you get it around wood and that, it gets cut. It'll break very
Yeah.
easily because
Easy.
it doesn't, yeah. So that fluorocarbon holds up a lot better. But in the context of that grass fishing, I'll use anything. So on lighter stuff, say I'm using braid and pitching like an 1/8 ounce with like a stick bait, I'll run like 50-pound braid. But
Okay.
when it comes to like those heavier weights and you're punching mats, I use anything from 65 to 80-pound braid. If it's
Oh,
super thick hydrilla, it's 80 pound. If it's
wow.
like a floating kind of mats, I'll just run 65 because it's a little more manageable. But yeah, I do like the braid around grass. And the same applies to, say, for instance, you have like lily pads and other emergent stuff like that, still vegetation, but it kind of
Yeah.
sticks out. It's a little more open. I'll oftentimes run maybe like a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce. And in that context, I'll actually run 65-pound or 50-pound just because it's a little easier to pitch and you still need the heavier braid, but you don't need as heavy a braid. You're not putting as much pressure on the line as you are when you're actually fishing those mats.
That's cool. Okay. And you said a heavy rod. And you said you need backbone, but you also don't want to hurt the fish. So is there like a specific way that you set the hook? Do you set it any different than I don't really know. Like, is it
It
your typical
depends.
kind of like
Yeah.
Texas rig set?
In Texas where he said, with the braid, you do want to reel down, but you don't need to hit them as hard. With
Okay.
fluorocarbon, you got to make sure you're reeled down because that fish could be swimming anywhere.
Yeah.
But with that braid, you just reel down and you feel for pressure. Oftentimes, when you're doing some of this heavier stuff, the 1/2 ounce, 3/4, especially the 1.5, you're gonna
Yeah.
know they're there. Like
Okay.
it's gonna go through and it's gonna go donk, and you're like, cool, something happened. And like that fish is going to be swimming with it. You're going to reel down and just set immediately. But for that reason, and it's all personal preference. Like a rod that I used to flip, I could give to you, and you're like, balls. What were you thinking? Dude?
I mean, that's how one of the things is always, it's always personal preference. A lot of it will always boil down to really what you prefer. But I feel like I've said that in just about all these videos at this point, because I think all rigs to some degree are all about how you prefer it in your hands.
100%.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I like a little more of what you call a moderate fast action. So
Okay.
basically that means the rod tip or the entire rod bends from tip to sort of like mid of the rod versus just the tip.
Right.
Basically, the reason I like that, you get a little bit better and quicker hook set when you have an extra fast rod where it's just that tip bending.
Yeah.
But what I find is that tip bending doesn't really absorb the pressure of fighting the fish in that cover, and it acts almost like a rubber band,
like a spring.
Yeah,
I get you. I understand that.
And so I like something that's a little more moderate. The other thing is too, I'll be perfectly frank, I'm the worst angler when it comes to feeling bites. Now, if they donk it, everybody knows it's a bite.
Right.
But sometimes, especially when you get cold weather in Florida, those fish will grab it and it's dead weight. It's like what everybody talks about with the jig bite. And if you have a rod that has a little more moderate bend, you have an insurance policy.
Okay.
So like you're gonna see the rod loading up and you're like, man, I'm an idiot, but I know when that rod loads up, like there's probably a fish there. So the rod sort of gives you, it gradually loads instead of loading very quickly, and then that fish drops it real quick. So it gives you a little kind of extra stopgap, I guess.
Like little moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A little personal moment. Like,
okay, hold on, I got it.
Exactly.
That's cool. Okay. Any specifics on reel speed or anything like that as far as ratio?
You want a faster reel.
Okay.
So I'm going to date myself a little. Back in the day when I kind of started fishing, a fast reel was like a 7.21 or like a 7-speed kind of reel. That's not the fastest reels you can get now. Now there's 8, there's 9s, So whatever you're comfortable with, because kind of like what we talked about in the beginning, this is a numbers game. Like you're making the number of drops that you make will reflect the number of bites you get. The more drops, the more bites. You increase your percentages by the number of drops. So the faster you can pick up that bait and move to another target, the more drops you're going to make. The other thing too, you'll find, especially with fluorocarbon, so there's a little bit of stretch in fluorocarbon, right? you need to make sure you reel down on that fish because you're going to have that stretch in the line.
Right.
And that little bit faster reel just allows you to get down and set
And gets
quicker. Yeah,
makes
without
sense.
dropping it.
Yeah, that
But
makes
the one thing I will warn you,
no,
I
you're
am
good.
the cheapest guy in fishing. I want to pay nothing for everything, you know?
Right.
The one thing you don't want to skip on is if you put braid on a reel, especially with fluorocarbon, it matters not as much. But if you are flipping with braid, you best have a reel in the 175 and up price point because what's
Yeah.
going to happen? Yeah, no doubt. I've fried so many reels. Like you fry the what is it? The drag washer in there.
Yeah.
You can cook a reel in one trip, and I've done
Wow.
it. Like, so you need something that has like some strong gears in it that can take a beating. You need to spend some money on it.
Okay. I mean, that's good advice because, like I said, I wouldn't have really known that. I mean, it makes sense for sure because it's something, it's almost like when you take a car out like a truck out mudding kind of thing. It needs some extra. You need some extra love. You might need to spend a little bit more money on the tires and the whole makeup before you just take it out mudding. So
it's
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's got to hold up, and the same goes for the rod. The rods have come down in price a lot though, and you can get a pretty decent quality rod for like $100 or so.
Yeah.
And usually the action's pretty good on it. So like that's not as bad, but the reels have so many little parts in them. There's so many things moving, and the more, like anything, the more moving parts, the more floating kind of things that you have in it, the more shit can go wrong. So
Right.
you gotta get something that's decent and that's tight.
Okay, so any specifications on a reel? Like, do you have like an actual one like that you would recommend? Like, if you pitch a lot, you would, is there one that's been hanging up and holding on for you for a while now? What's that?
So this is one of the oldest reels I have, and you can't get it anymore. It's a Shimano Corrado 200E. It's a grainy meaty. This is a classic. But the new Shimanos are pretty darn good. This one is probably the best that they ever made. And actually, if you go online and look, dude, you can't get these things. They charge more for them now than they did retail.
That's like a car, older cars just seem to, they last longer. They did better.
But to be honest with you, though, I've tried a lot of brands and stuff, and people give me hell about this. But like, I have no affiliation whatsoever with Shimano. I'd love for them to throw me a reel or two, but like the Shimano stuff, the upper end has been the most bulletproof of all the lines that I've run into, like the Corrados, the Metanium, but the price point on them is not something to smile at.
No,
like
it's tough. Yeah.
It won't make you happy.
No.
But the trick is when you pitch in there and reel down with 80-pound braid and you set the hook, that reel doesn't budge. It
feels all the difference.
Yeah, and it'll last. You can do it 100 times over and it's still good to go.
That's good. Okay, cool. I've never actually I don't own a Shimano, not yet. And that's just, just not yet. I intend to. I do own like a Daiwa. I do own a Daiwa. I don't have like the most reels, huh?
Daiwa's got nice stuff.
I like Daiwa, and so I'm kind of torn. I'm tempted because see, I'm affordable. I like getting things that, but like you said, you made a really valid point. If you're gonna go out and pitch, you need something that's gonna be able to withstand. So like my thought process is I definitely want to look at a couple of them. But if Shimano, I don't think there's anything bad people really have to say about Shimano besides the price. But otherwise, I mean, that's like the worst thing about Shimano. Everything else is always good. Everybody's always like, so I need to get me a Shimano and get on that game and figure that one out.
Well, and the thing that I try to do is I always try to make sure the equipment that I have has multiple functions. So I have these green meanies, these 200Es. And so I'll use them for flipping as much as I'll use them for frogging. So if I put 65-pound braid on it, I know I can take that reel and put it on a different rod, and I can go throw a frog in the same stuff. So like it has multiple functions because then I'm not changing out line all the time.
Absolutely.
But like, rarely will you find me with that Corrado with fluorocarbon on it because I got other reels that work for that don't need as strong of a build. So I try to kind of balance it out in that regard.
So what's the gear ratio on that one?
I think these are 7.21s. They're old school.
I think you said that, I think.
Yeah, it's long before the 8.21s. If I were to get a new one, I'd probably get I think they run a Corrado now. It's like 179 on Tackle Warehouse. I'd probably grab one of those because at some point they don't make parts for these jokers anymore.
Right.
So at one point they are going to give.
You're just going to have to hang it on the wall as a trophy.
Exactly. It's
how long have you had that one?
Hell, dude, I bought these when I was like poor as hell.
That's
Like
awesome.
2011, like yeah, 20. They went on clearance at Dick's, and I bought like freaking 5 of them, or 6 of them, and I think I'm down to like 4 of them at this point.
Wow. That's cool, man, for sure.
Yeah, they've been around for a while.
Yeah, got it. It's okay.
Yeah,
My phone vibrated
phone's
earlier and I was like,
blowing up. Like,
so why specifically a straight shank hook? Why not an EWG? Or I guess that would really be, I guess there's straight shank and EWG, I guess would really be the two biggest options I would think for punching. So why
so
not
I
why not
used to,
EWG?
I used to run an EWG, and it works. And actually, for certain kinds of flipping and pitching, I do run an EWG. So for example, um, I got a gambler stinger on here right here,
Okay.
and this is a 3/4 ounce weight. I was just in Florida, so I was pitching some cane, round reeds, pads, and
Nice.
the classic, beaver style kind of gliding bait. And I have an EWG on there. This is actually an owner wide gap plus. I think it's a 5/0.
Okay.
So when I'm around mainly emergent cover, trees are also a good example. So trees, pads, cane, Kissimmee grass, which we have down in Florida. What I find is that straight shank kicks out too quickly with the snell. Some guys do run that straight shank in that kind of stuff. I find that like it'll get stuck on the pads.
More snagged.
Snagged, and it inhibits my flow. So I run that EWG. I like that hook. The other thing I found too is, so EWG stands for extra wide gap, right? So there's a big bite in the hook. So when you're fishing around, especially like pads, you probably don't have a bunch of experience with that, but they have like super wide stems, and even the
I've
cane
seen.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of junk.
Thick.
It's super
Yeah.
thick.
Yeah.
And what I found is when you hook fish, oftentimes they'll get into all that stuff, and so it builds up on the hook.
Yeah.
And if you have that wider gap hook, the hook stays in there and that stuff piles on, but there's still a gap to hold the fish. If there's a smaller gap, like it kind of piles on and pushes the hook out, and you can't pin those fish as well. So with emergent cover, I'll run that offset shank or that EWG. Okay. But with mats, and that's what it mainly is, matted vegetation, having that straight shank kick out like that it's just the deal.
The extra.
It is. And it sets up, it's a system, you got the heavy weight, you have the hook kicking out, you got the extra long rod that's pretty stout, and all you got to do is that. You feel them on there, you pull. And 9 times out of 10, you hook them. Not saying you're going to get them out, but you hook them.
Yeah, because that's one of the other things about that's one of the best fights, I would imagine. The way it seems is when you're punching and flipping, and when you get a bite down there, it's one of the you don't know how much you're really pulling up. I've seen so many videos where guys are thinking they're pulling up something massive, and it ends up being maybe 2 pounds, but 5 pounds of it's lily pads and stuff like that, and it just can be a good and fun fight. I would love to see that. I know it can be difficult for me because like in my situations, a lot of times it's more of a fallen down tree, like we talked about with the branches. And if we get something, I've caught something on the other side of a log, and they just want to run you right through all of it. That's the first thing they do, is they dart and they want to run you under it, and that'll get you off quicker than anything, I think. But it's fun. It's definitely fun to try it, especially it's just challenging in itself. It's like, am I going to get it or not?
Well, it's super stimulating too, because it's very one-on-one fishing, and it's very detail oriented,
methodical.
Like when you get in the zone, like you're looking at every limb or every turn in the grass, or is that dome right? Is that chunk, looking for grass junctures and stuff. There's all kinds of little nuance to it.
Learning the branches.
Small, like a lot of times we think about fishing a chatterbait, a trap, and you're going and covering all this water. This is freaking like inch by inch fishing, so it's very intricate, which I really enjoy. Like you get super sort of in the zone with it.
So I know we talked about rods. Did we talk about the length of a rod? Does it I would imagine it might be shorter for me, but
well, and that's something that a lot of people don't know. Like a rod, usually the first thing that you judge it on is your height.
Right.
There's certain general rod sizes for techniques. So for instance, punching mats, I'd recommend a rod over 7'6". Now, if you're 5 foot tall, you probably want a 7'6". If you're 5'8", like me, probably want something a little longer, maybe like 7'10", 11, a 7, 10,
Wow.
maybe an 8 foot if you're 6 foot tall. So a longer rod is a little bit better as you get taller. I actually don't know why that is. I think it has something to do with like the leverage you get.
Like where your waist is or something to the ground.
Something like that, right? Like pant size, inseam, you know, all
Yeah.
that.
It all matters, the width and everything.
Exactly. They got to take measurements. That's
Yeah,
what they should
yeah.
do. You
This
go
rod
into
will
the
fit
friggin'
you.
fake shop. Yeah, they put you, come on back to the fitting room with me. We'll get you
That's
measured.
it's like how they measure you up for baseball or softball, you know, when you get measured up for your bat or something. This one will fit you perfect.
And it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's similar.
because it's about your reach. It's about, you know, how it sets up for what you're doing. As I go into more emergent stuff though, like for instance, like pads and that, it's still kind of open around me, but I'm fishing a little tighter target, and I like a slightly lighter rod, so I'll go with a heavy and maybe like a 7.6. That's usually what I like a 7.6, maybe a 7.7, but that's kind of perfect for.
That's long for me.
Well, but here's the deal though. So close quarters, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right. That's why I'm saying for me, it's like that's long. I mean, on a boat, I totally get it. I know it's a whole nother world when you literally you can be, you know, this far apart, but if I'm on the bank and you're on the boat, it's a whole nother world, you know. And
and with that quarter rod, you get more accuracy too. So like I can be next to a bluff inside a tree pitching, and usually I'll run like a 7.2. I'll run anything from a 7 to a 7.2 or so, 7.3. So you still get a little bit of length, but like you're a lot more accurate. And the other thing too is that shorter rod's a little bit stiffer, even if it's like a lighter action rod, maybe say it's like a light heavy or a medium heavy. It's still a stiffer rod because it's shorter. It doesn't,
because it has less to deal with. Yeah,
exactly. And that's better for the fluorocarbon because you need a little more stout. But the trick is with that, and this is where I run into problems too, because I'm used to using those longer rods, is you gotta make sure you reel down, because you don't have as much rod to pick up line. So if you're not reeled down and you're taught with the fish, you're literally setting the hook on just dead water. Okay.
Makes sense. So I know we've gone over basically all the basics of it. The one thing we really haven't talked about much, what's your favorite bait? What if you were to really just pick? I know there's probably a handful of them, but yeah, I was about to say, I know you pulled a whole box out, you know, but I mean, you can go over all of them if you want to. I guess, is there like a certain style? I guess, does it change it up?
I'll run through a couple just that cover the different, really the different styles and stuff we talked about.
Right.
So down in Florida, one of my favorites is this guy right here. This is a Gambler BB cricket.
Oh, I like the crawls on him.
It's small, you know. Yeah. Like it's probably, I think, like 3.5 inches or so. Super small, very, very non-active appendages.
Yeah, right. That's awesome.
There's some little danglies. Because what happens in Florida is when it gets cold, those fish, they really get lethargic. They get kind of weird. And usually you're doing this kind of a technique like in early spring, late winter. So I want something very compact. And I don't want it to kick that much. I want it to get through real clean, and that small, real compact, and then it's easy to go through. Yeah. So that's friggin' kind of like my go-to. Then as we're doing more like emergent or like tree cover, I want something that moves a little more, also has a little more weight, so I have a little more bulk to pitch. And usually, and it's super standard, but like a glide or a beaver style bait. This guy, you guys saw it before, but so that's a Gambler Stinger, but it's a classic kind of like ribbed beaver style bait, got a little more kick to the legs, because as you get in that emergent stuff, it's a little more about like the swim, you know, as it moves down and glides down.
Okay. And do you ever use like worms or any kind of thing? Is there ever a time and a place?
Stick baits. That's one that's awesome. So like an ace, Cinco as people call them, like a 5-inch stick bait is absolutely killer. Pitching around grass, pitching around trees, especially in that early time of year, spring or so, when those fish, they seem to not want as much kicky, you know, less kicky. Spring seems a little bit better, a little more just shake and like natural fall, maybe a glide fall.
When you're getting more into the warmer areas of the year.
Exactly. Yeah. As it gets warmer, you want more water displacement, a little more kick. And that's like, you know, like your Zoom speed crawls and stuff like that. But like stick baits on light weights up to like a 1/2 ounce, 3/8 of an ounce is absolutely killer. Like it's a sneaky way to do it. You can do it with worms and stuff like that. But I find that the slightly more compact baits or baits with less appendages, they're easier to work with, and the fall is better. You get a little more of a glide fall with that, like a ribbon tail worm or something. It kind of yo-yos or spins down. Yeah. And the whole trick is it's all about that fall, and you want that fall to happen in a very small space. So you're hitting that target and getting that fall in.
Okay, so you're getting real specific. I you know, and I knew that, but it kind of like, it makes a whole lot of sense. Like you basically have one little place in the whole pond that you're literally making a target for, and you want to make sure you can get it. What's your favorite season? You were talking.
The one thing I'll throw in there though is so it's all about fall, right? So those are kind of the baits that I use, but you can control that fall. So if you're using a ribbon tail, maybe it's because you want the bait to fall super slow. You want more drag as it falls. So you're using a heavier weight, but you want to slow it down. And that's where playing with those appendages versus just something that's straight and going to go straight down.
Yeah.
That's where kind of the details kick in. And that's where you can kind of adjust that fall rate to sort of get the action that you want.
Okay, that makes sense. And you were mentioning it, but like what would you say your favorite season is, or how would you rate it per season? Like when is it the best and when is it the worst?
So it varies. So Florida's its own country, just like Texas, right? So in Florida, flipping works almost 90% of the year.
Nice.
But that mat deal is great, like that pre-spawn sort of like late winter kind of deal, absolutely killer. And then we sort of transition in, and the brim go to spawn. They spawn around the cane, the round reeds, the pads, and that's when that emergent kind of pitching really comes into play. However, I'm in Alabama now, so now I see seasons. I see the leaves change.
Right. Yeah, you see colors in the trees.
Exactly. And what's crazy is the grass dies. So change, So like there isn't any grass to pitch unless it's like summer, late spring. And so at least from a grass standpoint, like June, July, maybe even May, depending on how the season is going, and then all through summer, it can be really good. Wood, on the other hand, is around 365 days out of the year.
Yeah.
And really, if the water temp is above, say like 53, 54 degrees, they'll eat something pitched into the wood.
Oh yeah, 50s is a good temperature. Yeah, 50. I feel like 50s is great.
50s is the juice. Like upper 50, like 56, 57.
It's like a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So is pitching, would you say like your favorite rig, or is it one of your favorite?
I like doing it, and I'm pretty good at it.
Okay.
But I've come to a point where I kind of do everything, and I enjoy that. But I definitely am stronger at certain things. And just because of my background in Florida, if you stick a mat in front of me and put two other people fishing against me, like you're
out fishing
grass. Yeah. There's certain things like I'm pretty good at, and I can read a mat pretty well. Pitching isolated cover and emergent cover, I'm pretty decent at that too, just because we do it so much. The funny thing I tell people about Florida is, like, in all honesty, 365 days of the year, you can probably go fish in Florida with 4 rods and never change it and still catch fish. So you get very fluent,
niche oriented,
very niche, And I've had to change that because now, I'm flipping wood. Maybe one cool thing that I learned, awesome pattern up here on Lake Gunnersville, is actually, so usually mats come out of the water, right? So it's on top of the water, you can see it. Well, we started doing something that they do in Texas, where you actually flip these hydrillodomes that are like 2 foot under the water. You gotta have really good glasses. You gotta kind of look around, look and see. You gotta have the right depth, and it's super cool because you're like kind of like pitching and punching these like little sneaky spots. So I love pitching. I'm pretty good at it. And if there's, I guess you could say, if there's a pitching bite, I'm looking for it. So it is something I really like to do.
It's one of those defaults that you'll just automatically put on.
Exactly. That's a great way.
I get that. There was something else. Do you know about, do you know the biggest fish you've caught on a punching rig?
Not the biggest, but I've caught multiple, like 9 and I don't think I've ever caught one over 10 punching. Actually, I did, but it wasn't. I did, but it wasn't on the scale. So
so it doesn't count.
It doesn't count. But I caught one years ago so my first boat that I had was a modified John boat, like a 1977 it was so old school, and I put a deck on it, and I was fishing in North Central Florida when I went to UF, and I caught a mondo, dude. It puts my 9-pounders to shame. This thing was ungodly long and ungodly fat. But I've caught multiple 9s, 7s, 8s.
Wow.
it's so much fun to catch those big ones in there.
Yeah.
You never know what you have. And like half the time you got to go in and get them. My buddy actually caught, what the hell was that? The 10-8, I think it was.
Wow.
We had to he hooked it and pinned it to the top of the mat, and we couldn't get in there. It was so thick, my trolling motor won't go through. So I had to go back on the big motor, literally plow the boat in like a freaking snow plow.
Like a blender?
Good. It was terrible. So like we're getting the boat stuck. We're like digging. So we don't know if it's an alligator or a bass. And there she was. She popped out right when we got in there and caught it. I think it was his PB because I think the one that we caught. So it was freaking cool.
What an angler won't do to get to a big fish.
Oh, dude, when you hear that braid screaming, you're all fired up. Like,
right, you can't.
Yeah,
I'm jumping in. I'm gonna get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I'm over here I'm hype about a 5.86. Like, like if I did something that was twice that.
You know, and that's what I've had to deal with in Alabama. You know, not that you have to reset your standards, but you have to understand what a body of water will hold. You know, like what's good for where I'm at. And in the end, really, you catch anything over 4, I don't care where you are, that's a good fish.
Yeah.
Like,
it's definitely
it's all relative.
You're getting to a chunk for sure when you get into a certain weight range. And I mean that 5.86, it's, to me, I like catching big fish. I mean, I think anybody, when you catch a big fish, you're gonna get hype about it. My favorite part is a good fight. Like I love having a fish that'll sit there and wants to fight me for it. And like that's the adrenaline rush is everything. If I pull it up and it's only like a 2-pounder, I'll give all the hype in the world for it. I'm more proud of it because it's smaller and it's giving me more fight than a bigger fish would. I've had that happen so many times where the smaller fish gives me a bigger fight.
You need to go catch some spots.
Yeah. I need to get out on the near.
They will blow you. Spots and freaking smallmouth like are a tough call, but dude, I love me some spots. And oftentimes you're fishing with some lighter line in that because the water's clear or they're deeper. And dude, there's nothing more fun than catching one of those 4-pound spots on freaking linear with like.
And that's big for a spot, right?
That's big, but there's giants out there. There's 5 and 6-pound spots out there.
Yeah, what's like the biggest? I mean, spots don't get terribly big, do they? Or am I mistaken?
They don't get huge. Like I think the biggest one I ever caught was like 4.5. Wow. But there's multiple, like there's a guide out there who I met like Jimbo's guide service. I think he's caught like multiple freaking over 6 out there.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
I didn't think they got too big. Maybe I'm just.
Well, the thing is there's herring out there, and then herring get like hell.
Those guys, they grow so fast.
Yeah, they grow super fast, and it's a perfect forage for those spots because the spots roam around, they're suspended, and that herring, in like 1 hour, it can be on the bottom in 40 foot of water. The next freaking 5 minutes, it can be on the top over 120 feet of water. So the spots move with that bait, and because they're moving so much, they got to eat all the time. So they get awfully big.
Do they have a different? See, this is one of those things, and it's kind of, I mean, it's off topic with our rig or whatever, but do spots have do they have a different pattern than largemouth? Or I mean, I guess they do. Yeah.
100%.
I've heard smallmouth do, so it makes sense.
Well, and that's why there's a couple of lakes where I can catch like the slam, you know, the Alabama slam, I guess it'd be smallmouth, largemouth spot. And there's few lakes, I can catch them all in the same place, you know. But for the most part, usually, like you go to Lanier, even on the TVA, Gunner's going that, like you're not going to catch a spot and a smallmouth in the same place unless it's maybe summer and those fish are offshore.
And they're all in one spot.
You catch them in the same place.
So they just have, I mean, is there spawn at different times and everything?
No, it's the same. They'll spawn a little bit cooler.
Okay.
The biggest thing with spots is they're renowned for suspending. So whereas largemouth, like it's like take a jig, drag it on the bottom, right? Drag a worm on the bottom, you know, like hit the grass. So spots really, they'll relate to harder cover, but their biggest thing is like, so when I catch a spot, say on the near, oftentimes it's in like, say like 35, 40 feet, but that spot is only down 15 feet.
He's in the middle.
It's in the middle. Like, and so I'll be like swimming a Kitech, you know, 20 feet off the bottom or 10 feet off the bottom. And that fish comes up and gets it, you know? So like they're really middle water column. That's why they're fun to catch, because it gets really technical, because usually you can throw a bait, you're in 10 foot of water, you throw it, you let it sink to the bottom and you pull it back. With spots, you're in 10 foot of water, but those jokers can be 8 foot down. They can be on the surface. They can be 5 foot down. And you really have to dial in your presentation to where they're at in the water column.
Crazy. Actually, and you know what, you kind of like, you triggered something there for me when we were talking about, you said something about a jig. With punching, do you ever use a jig? Is there ever a
100%.
situation? Yeah.
Yeah,
Is there like a certain weight
jig
you like to
around
use?
wood. A jig around wood is killer. I got some nickels jigs that I use. Basically, you play with a lot of different jigs and you find various heads that work better in different kinds of cover. So
Right.
there's a couple of nickels jigs that I use that are very clean for fishing wood. So I really like them there. Plus, they have a little smaller hook on them, so I can put some tiny baits because I like fishing a little more finesse or something.
Smaller.
Yeah, a little more compact. At that same time, though, down in Florida, one of the coolest patterns I've ever been on is what we call a double weed guard jig. So basically, that's your classic jig, and instead of one weed guard sticking out, from the jig, it actually has two. So it sticks out from the head just like that, and
Weird.
it's killer for fishing around round reeds, pads, like super thick grass,
Super weedless.
super weedless. And it for some reason, like it's such old timer stuff. But there's times when they'll bite a jig and they won't bite a straight plastic. I don't know if it's the fall, the fluff that
Presentation, right?
Yeah, there's something to it. But it holds true anywhere you fish. There's some days they'll bite that Texas rig versus the jig.
Yeah.
It really is its own little sort of presentation. And I don't know why, because shit, in the water they look the same pretty much.
Right. I mean, because when they get to the bottom, the skirt does this and the plastic's the same.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a tool. But I will tell you this though, when they're not biting a jig, they're not biting a jig. So you almost gotta play around with it. When I get really detail oriented when I'm flipping and pitching. So like with mats, I'll have a straight plastic and then I'll have a plastic with a punch skirt. When I'm flipping around wood, I'll have a Texas rig plastic and I'll have a jig of the same or maybe a little heavier weight. That's another thing to note. If you do, so you're around a tree, right? And usually they've been biting, say, like a 3/8 ounce Texas rig in a tree. If you use a jig, you always want to bump up the weight of that jig by a 1/4 ounce, just because and maybe that's why they bite it, but that fall of the jig is a little bit slower. So in order to get that same fall rate and that same tumble, you got to bump your weight up on the jig.
That
Same
makes
applies
sense.
if you're offshore fishing too. You're dragging a worm or something, a 3/8 worm, and you're on the bottom and you're good. You throw a jig out there, it's 3/8. You can barely feel the bottom. You got to go up to a 1/2 ounce. You always want to bump up by a 1/4 ounce.
Okay, that makes sense. See, I didn't know that, and that's just one of those things. It makes perfect sense because the skirt itself gives it a slower fall because it gives it that whole presentation.
The bulkier presentation. Then you got that trailer on there too, and just the weight. I think the weight centering is different, so it has a different. It just doesn't get down there as quick, which is what's cool though too. So you can play around with that too. Like, hey, you're getting bit on say like a 1/2 ounce in the trees, but you missed a few fish that didn't grab it right. Well, maybe you want to slow that fall down, so you pick up that 1/2 ounce jig. So it's got a little slower fall, but you're getting that same presentation, but you might get a few more bites. That's really the art of it, is playing with that fall rate, like we talked about.
It sounds like it's real intricate.
Yeah.
I love it. Like that's one of my things about fishing, and that's, one of the biggest things about this whole talking tackle deal is I'm really learning a lot. And that's, something I've said, like I said, probably all my videos at this point is I'm learning a lot because I really like it when you know something so specific and going into all the details. It's, it's a lot. I'm trying to be like a sponge, and the nitty gritty of a flipping and pitching kind of deal. It sounds very detail oriented. And for me, that's fun because like, I'll sit out there and I'll go and it's like when there's a fish out there and you're like, I know it's somewhere right out here. And you just sit there and you can't see it. I don't even know how to explain that. I don't know. It's like everything's right for that one spot. So you keep at it and you just keep at it, and it makes you sit there and you will go nuts trying to figure out where the fish is. It's there somewhere. So it sounds like punching is actually going to be something I'm gonna have to. I say this in about all my videos at this point because we always make them sound so fun. I'm gonna have to try that one more for sure. I've been on a lipless crankbait here lately. It's just been one of the biggest things I've been catching them on, and it's been great. I've been loving it, but I'm trying to make sure I kind of get more versatile. It's just what I've been catching them on, but I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna be able to learn all this stuff this year.
Well, I'll tell you what though, like a lipless is great right now. It's one of the winter staples. I've actually been catching a bunch on it. It has a real tight wobble, so it's kind of perfect for now. But when you start seeing a few fish cruising the bank, or when you start getting in that 57 to 59, 61, when you know they're sort of staging, that's when you need to think about flipping, because basically they're going to the bank, they're
Right to
seeing
the spot.
cover, and freaking they'll like they're using that, and then they'll spawn next to it. So oftentimes, like a lot of the beds you'll notice are like on the tip of a tree fall, or they're next to some piece of cover. Well, that joker was sitting in that like a day before, 2 days before, moving up into it, using it as a staging point, and then they made their bed right there,
So is pitching a really good like bed fishing kind of thing? Is it good for?
It's good for beds, but it's also good as sort of a staging or a pre-spawn technique, because the fish tend to use that cover right before they're about to do their business,
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't even.
It's like anything else, you can do it all year pretty much, especially once the water gets warmer. But certain windows are better,
where it's highlighted and it really shines. That makes sense.
The grass popped up, if the grass pops up, you can go flip. So like it's all, and I think that's the thing that like we have all these baits and we focus a lot on the baits, but the baits are tools for delivery, So like in a way, like if you actually look more at like the seasons, and like you said, there's a fish there. So like, how do I deliver my presentation? How do I make a presentation into or around where I'm thinking that works in that context?
Right.
And that's what flipping is. It's a tool for putting your bait in a place that the fish should be certain times, because they're using that cover either to eat, either to stage up to spawn, either maybe to hide from the sun a little bit.
Yeah.
Things.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to try that for sure. Any extra kind of crazy tips or tricks or anything like that? Because I think we've pretty much covered it all. Is there anything that you can think of that we haven't covered, or any extra?
The only thing that I'll tell you with flipping in that is it's not. It can be a numbers game, especially in spring. But when you get after spring, flipping is a big fish game. You have your schools of fish. You go catch with your moving baits. They're all grouped together. But the bigger fish, and when I mean bigger, I mean like your upper echelon fish in a body of water, are usually kind of loners. So instead of being on that river bar or on that little ledge drop where there's like 20 of them, they're going to be on that dock post, on the one post in the back corner, or they're going to be in that one lonely tree. So if you want to try this technique, don't think about numbers, think about bait placement and where they should be, and you're going to get bit. You're not going to catch a bunch usually. That's usually kind of the recipe. But fish, largemouth especially, they like cover. If you're putting your bait in the right place, you're going to get bit. You're just not going to get as many bites as you would with like normal moving baits covering water, because you are being so precise.
But it's a big fish.
It's a big fish deal.
Okay.
Fish deal.
I mean, anytime, because I feel like anytime it changes up with me. I'll go out fishing some days and I'm like, I'm going out and I feel like I always go out wanting a big one. But there's some days where I'll go out and I'm just like, I just want to go out and catch a few. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as I'm out there having fun. But there's definitely a different mindset when you go out specifically trying to find the big ones. When you're like, I know a big one's here, I'm going out for it. So sounds like I'm gonna have to try.
If you're hard-headed, this is the technique for you. So like, I'm stubborn as hell. So
me too. I'm a Taurus, so I'm famous for being stubborn.
That's perfect, man, because this is the stubborn fisherman's game. Right?
One of those where you sit there constantly, and I'm like, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it.
I'm gonna make you eat it. If you
I'm gonna make him bite it. Yep, exactly. I know that game, especially when you see them. It's the funnest thing. Not funnest. It actually can be quite aggravating in the sense when you see a fish that's about to spawn and you can see it, and you try everything. I'm talking, you have maybe 2 or 3 rods with you, and you have a Texas rig, a moving bait, whatever, and you're throwing all of it, and it just doesn't want anything to do with you.
It's like you won't even look at me.
Yeah.
Come on.
It drives me nuts, but I feel like that happens at least once every year. You find one that's just like, I know you're there. I'm not going to take anything you throw at me.
You know what? And that's a really interesting point, because usually it's a window too. Depending on, usually there's waves of fish that move up to spawn, because they're so, especially if you're fishing a big lake, they don't all spawn at the same time. But there's usually like a 3 or 4 day window when you see those fish, cruising the bank and you can't catch them. That's actually a great time to flip, because flipping really, even though you're using a soft plastic in that and you think it's kind of like a worm deal where you're kind of coaxing to bite, it's a reaction. It's just like when you rip your trap off the grass or like you bounce your square bill, they're deciding in a split second, am I going to eat that or not? And when you have those fish that are cruising, there's going to be some that are stuck in cover, and they're not going to eat it when you drag your worm through, just like that. But if you drop like a 1/2 ounce jig, a 3/4 ounce jig, or if you punch on through to them, that thing goes, and they need to make their decision immediately.
And it almost startles them.
Exactly.
Like they don't have any choice.
Yeah, they either bite or they don't.
Right.
And that's usually a good window to do some of that, because those fish are shallow. There's going to be some of them that are stuck in that cover, but they won't look at your little drag baits, throwing a fluke to them. They won't actually come to get it. So you bring the bait to them and you make them react to it.
This is really like kind of, and I'm like a little bit getting a little mind blown here about this, just in the sense because like I do exactly what you said you shouldn't be doing. I just kind of take my worm and I've thrown it. I'm not a pro at any kind of punching though. So now it's one of those, maybe I've been doing that wrong. I've been having the presentation wrong. I need to present it with a heavier weight, it sounds like, so it goes past them and it gets that reaction weight. Because I do ponds, so typically I'm throwing a 1/4 ounce, and an 1/8 ounce. Those are like my two main go-tos. Right. 1/4 ounce usually. I'll go up to 3 ounce, especially when I'm fishing jigs and things like that. But 1/2 ounce is on my heavier end, usually speaking, But I guess if I'm going to start doing punching and stuff like that, I have 3/4 ounce, I have 5/8 and all that too. And I guess I just need to try it and see. Yeah. Why not?
It's definitely something to try. And they, like I said, like you're going to see them like not want to eat it, but like you're going to get those fish that are going to react to it. Whereas like with that 1/4 ounce and 1/8 ounce, trying to be all finessey with it, they won't even give it the time of day.
No.
And that's kind of the game. So it's fun and the rewards are great. But you got to understand that you're going to have a lot of situations where you're just not going to get bit. You're going to have the perfect tree, the perfect setup. You're going to do everything right. Nothing's going to happen. But there is that one place they're going to be sitting, and that fish is going to react, and it is going to be fun.
I have seen on a video, and it was I forget who, but it was a video, and he put on there an animated kind of thing, a scenario where it's like you would go back into kind of a cove area, but let's say there was 5 places of laydown. And if there were 5 places, it's more of a chance that the bass are more spread out.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for more, if you're fishing on a lake, let's say, you want to find more of a cove that has less laydown areas, because then there's more of a chance of there being a higher percentage of bass there.
Yeah,
does that make any sense?
Like isolated cover. So basically it's the same concept. It applies in Florida and applies here, but it's also like a go from broke scenario, so like so you got a pocket, right? Like, and there's fish that live in there and there's one tree on it. Well, any fish that's decent size or that wants to relate to cover is going to relate to that tree, right?
Right.
But you also blow your load, and if nothing happens, nothing happens,
Right.
But the bigger fish tend to do that. We do that a lot down in Florida with what we call like isolated domes. So there'll be a hydrilla that'll grow everywhere, right? So there's hydrilla everywhere. But what you do is you find these isolated domes that are like one, and then there isn't another one for like 150 yards. And actually a video that I'm going to post is all about that.
Cool.
We have scattered grass, and I found 2 different mats that are totally solo. They're 10 by 10,
right?
6 and a 7 on them. So like these fish, especially the bigger ones, they like that. Kind of like we were talking about, like the lonely dock post. There's that one dock post. They like that isolated cover because it's lonely, because the bigger fish are usually a little more solitary.
Right.
At the same time, though, I'm always one to kind of dispute stuff. I'll take a pocket that's stacked with trees because it's a lot of cover. So it means there's a lot of fish that can move into it. For bigs, though, that's when that isolated concept comes into play.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, that it all adds up. That makes perfect sense, because bigger fish do like, that was actually what I was going to ask you. You answered that in the sense I didn't know if, I do know that bigger bass do like to be more isolated, and so they're not typically getting into a little shoal of bass or anything like that, a little school doing that kind of thing. They're tend to be just out by themselves, hanging out, the loners.
Usually, how fishing is. There's no rule like golden
right
works all the time. But I have found that like isolated cover tends to lean towards like the bigger fish in the lake. And you'll even notice too, I know bank fish, so you don't use like your sonar a lot, but
right.
I do a lot of graph fishing, like I do a lot of like school chasing. And so like I'll find like a school of freaking 100 fish, dude. It's like, oh, it's awesome. And the funny part is, especially down in Florida, I have a couple lakes where I'll find these schools of 100 fish lined up all along the
Yeah.
bottom. And I'll actually go and I'll scan around them, and you find these little segmented groups. And it's not like 100 fish, it's like 4 or 5. And they're in this little kind of like side click, and literally I'll target them and catch like an 8 or a 9.
And they'll be bigger.
Pounders out of the school. So even in the sense of when you have fish schooled up, you still see behaviors where you have these little kind of offshoots. So they're kind of with the school, but they're not,
Right.
They're in their own little group. There's 4 of them. They're all giant, but they're off from that mega pod of fish. So it
Interesting.
just seems to be like a behavior that they show,
Yeah, see, that's something that I would definitely, whenever I ever end up getting on a boat and end up getting the graph, that's going to be like, I've looked at graphs and I've seen it. And that's something that I feel like would be fun because it's part of that intricacy. You really can learn a lot from graphs and from sonars and just watching their behaviors. Like you said, them being bigger, but there's a whole massive one and then they're just kind of off to the side. You can literally target it like that. It'd be nice to be able to do that from the bank. One of these days, they're going to have something for bank anglers, because I feel like bank anglers, we're a huge niche of people. It's one of the main things that people start out doing, and a lot of people always stay at doing it throughout their life. It's just they don't think about like the tools just aren't as easy and accessible as far as being able to find sonar and all that. They have little things out there, but I don't know how good they are. I've heard pretty bad reviews on some of the things they have out there.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. One thing like I used to do when I bank fished is, and it doesn't help, it's not as real time, I guess, as a graph, but like I'll actually use the lake maps to bank fish. So I'll pick my spots based upon like channel swings, things along those lines, because you actually know from, especially with like GPS, like you grab your phone and you'll know exactly where you are on like Google Maps. And if you integrate that with like Navionics or stuff like that, you can actually bank fish certain areas. So like if a channel swing comes off of the bridge and cuts next to the bank, I know if I go and if I'm able to access like this little point that sticks out, I know there's deep water on the other side, maybe a little flat to my right. So in a way, you can kind of hedge some of the technology that you have to, yes, not be as detail oriented as you would with like a graph and market and being able to move around. But there's ways, like for every problem, there's a solution, right? And that's what we do.
Absolutely.
We solve problems. We figure out what bait will work in all the snaggy cover. And like there's ways to kind of manipulate your positioning if you can. It's all about access. But there's ways to manipulate and be better positioned. That's why you always run into them jokers, dude. You're sitting on the bank and you're 25 yards down from some dude, and he's catching freaking 30, and you're throwing the same bait, casting, and you're like,
not catching junk,
dude. And it's because he's on some rock pile, or he has like one stump that's sticking out, or maybe that's channel swings or something.
Yeah, I was about to say, the wind's blowing a certain way.
Exactly.
It's always something.
With that, there's ways to kind of to do that. I'll throw you this too. One thing that you can do, and it's with Google Earth. So if you want to get into grass fishing, one of the hardest things that we have in more seasonal kind of climates is the grass isn't up all year, right? So you can't see it. One thing that I do is oftentimes if I'm going to a place maybe in a few months or something and I want to do some like pre-fishing, I'll actually take my Google Earth map and I'll turn on like a July date, an August date, and
see what it looks like.
All the grass is grown up, right? So you can actually do that to pick some of your bank spots and be like, dude, well, like last year there was grass right there. So if I go and I fish right there, I'll be able to access that grass. I can flip it, I can pitch to it, I can cast to it. So there's ways to kind of, not as well as graphs and the mobility of a boat, but there's ways to increase your odds and just be a more detail oriented bank fisherman with all the technology stuff we have.
Yeah, for sure. That's something I didn't even think about that with Google Earth. I forgot they can actually go back. I mean, they can go back. That's smart.
I found a lot of freaking
I'm gonna steal that tip for sure. And if it comes in handy, I'm gonna give you a shout out, because I mean that sounds like, that's, to me, I'm just like, why haven't I done that yet?
Well, it saves you work too, right?
Yeah,
because
for sure.
When you're bank fishing, you're freaking trekking your ass all over the place. You're walking
everywhere.
And dude, like usually you get to a spot and you're stuck there for 15, 20 minutes. Like you're going to fish it through. So
you got to make a choice and be like, I'm going to, like, especially depending on the pond,
Yeah. And if you can pick a better spot, like and the other thing that I found too with the Google Earth is you find little creeks and dump ins
Yeah.
that you can't see. And those are the sneaky ones, because then you can even wade in too during the summer and you can access a lot more water. So there's a lot of sneaky fun things
Follow
to
the
do.
creek down. I
Follow
almost
the
did that
creek.
the other day. I was at a pond. I'm a pond hopper, you know, true and true. I'll go to places you may not are supposed to go, whatever. But I was walking, I pulled up my Google Maps, and sure enough, there was another pond that was like within walking distance. And so I
Yeah.
start trotting over there, and you see my little thing moving on the map, and then I come right up to it, and it's a whole fence. And it says
Oh.
private property, beware, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it's like right, I couldn't see it because it was in the
Right.
middle of the woods. And it was
Right.
just right over a hill. Like I could almost, you know how like it's like you saw it and then it dipped down and you're like, it's
Yeah.
gotta be right there. And I couldn't. I
Yeah.
was just like,
So close, but so far.
so close. Yeah. If it wasn't as big and bold as it was, they clearly were trying to make a point, and I
Yeah.
wasn't willing to risk it that day. But one of those untouched ponds I want to be able to fish on eventually. We'll see how that ever goes. I don't know.
Yeah, but
But
that's what's cool with doing the videos though. You start, I know, like in my experience with doing the channel, I've been able to meet some cool ass people, you know,
Right.
and like as you grow your network and like interact with people, you get access. You know,
Yeah.
there's stuff I never knew about fishing, that like techniques, but also areas and lakes where, you know, my buddy's like, hey bro, go check out like Lake Z. And I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Yeah, you'll thank me later, you know. And you go and you check it out, it's badass. So like,
Yeah.
that's kind of the cool thing as we interact and sort of like meet each other, mingle, share different techniques. Like what also comes along the line is different spots and like different places to go. And
Right.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, because I
That's why
mean
like this.
Alabama's not that far, so I mean maybe one day.
I got an extra bedroom. You're more than welcome, dude.
There we go. That'd be cool for real. It's like all the people that I know. I know some here in Georgia, but it seems like I know more people from Alabama, Texas, and Florida, and like just all around. And I mean, it's definitely in the South area, I guess you could say.
Right.
But it's one of those I would love to be able to like make like a road trip and just kind of hit all the marks and go around. You know, it'd take probably a month or two for me to hit all of them, but it'd be worth it. I feel like
that's definitely like my dream. If I can get like
Dude.
the channel to be a little bit bigger and like make a little bit of money off of it, like, dude, call me in my truck. Cause
yeah, you got it, man. Traveling is one of the fun parts of it. I feel like it's gonna be. I mean, I'm limited with ponds, and I mean, I've been on a lake a few times, but I feel like if I started getting on boats and things like that, I would do so much more damage than I'm doing now than I am with the ponds and stuff. I have a kayak, and I got frustrated last night about it because it's a 13-foot, it's long, it's 80 pounds, and I haven't gotten the right vehicle or the whole setup. I have a car, and I need to either figure out how to get it better on top of the car without worrying about damaging the car,
Yeah.
or I need to get a truck or an SUV, something that's easier to tote it around with. Because the kayak will just be a game changer for me. I have a bunch. The ponds around here are great, and there's a bunch of them that are big enough to take on,
Right.
kayaks, places I wouldn't have ever fished before unless I get out there on a kayak. So
Yeah.
that's something I'm ready to do. But dreams.
Well, yeah, but you make them happen, and you grow up
That's right.
stuff too. Like what's interesting too. I bank fish like up through when I was in college,
Yeah.
and like I always thought too, like if I get a boat, I'm gonna f them up.
I'm gonna
get it, But what's interesting though is with more freedom comes more responsibility too.
Yep.
So it's amazing. We think so when you're fishing a pond, you have X amount of decisions that you can make. When you start getting on the boat, exponentially, those decisions are like increased. And
Yeah.
same with a kayak too. We have so many more options, different angles, different
Yeah,
places we
yeah.
can go. You can go deep and shallow. So it's cool because the game never ends. We just
Right.
expand on the field we can play in,
Right.
It's so awesome.
Yeah. And that's why I always look at it like it's not really a competition when it comes to somebody being on a bank or on a boat. It's like you said, it's more like expanding the horizon in a sense, because I feel like everybody starts on the bank. So I wouldn't consider bank fishing. I mean, and it could be different for other people, but I wouldn't consider bank fishing an easier type of fishing. Actually, sometimes I feel like it can be harder because you're losing more stuff. When you're out on a boat, you can go right up to it and get it off majority of the time. I wish there was an easier hack for that with people on the bank, but when you're stuck sometimes, and it's just, in the water. But I definitely like the idea of it being, expanding the horizon on the fishing and getting out there. I want to get out on a boat more. I've been a few times, and I went fishing, and like you said, it was just like I went out there and I was like, I don't know what I like it. Yeah, it was just kind of like what? I was
need
just
more
going, I was like
bait.
reverting back to the knowledge I have on bank fishing, and I was like, this isn't gonna work. Like it's just there's more to it. I could be throwing everything. And so I finally got to a point where I was just like, I'm gonna try this and I'm gonna stick with it because otherwise I don't know what to do.
Yeah, right. What if I need a Valium and freaking tone it down?
Right. I need to calm down. Oh man, it's been a lot of fun. We've been solid talking for about an hour or so now. I think I've been kind of trying to keep an eye on here. I've been lucky so far, and I've said it in every video, and anybody who actually watches to this point is like, she's about to say this. So I don't know how long Zoom actually allows you to record. It's been doing plenty, well over an hour at this point. That's one of those things. It told me 45 minutes initially, and I kind of feel bad now because I did one of my first ones with Alex Rudd. And I was like, it's going to cut me off, so like we got to stop towards the end. And I felt really bad now because I have all the other ones are over an hour.
I've been using it for meetings for years. And like, literally they do this, like, we're going to get you and shut you down. And then it never does. So
and I guess until they try, I don't know. It's working for me.
Come at me, bro. Come at me.
It's working for me. It's been uploading fine. Knock on wood. And I watch it tonight. Be like, you know what? I'm done. But I appreciate it so much. I do want to do it again. I know we'll have to talk. You like swim baits, right? Was that the other one?
I like everything. Listen,
you like everything. Okay.
I will freaking try it. Like I like everything. And that's what's really been cool with moving to Alabama is the wealth of baits that I can throw and the amount of sort of environments that I can get into and use different techniques and stuff has expanded exponentially. So it's so much fun here because like it's tougher, it's harder to fish, but I got to a point where I sort of hit a ceiling. Not to say that I was the best or that I could catch them all in Florida, but I got sick of doing the same.
You felt the challenge again.
Yeah, like I want to sort of reinvigorate. Just like when you go to a new lake, you're intimidated, you're apprehensive, but it's also like this cool opportunity.
Exciting.
Yeah. So it's just been cool. So like anything you ever want to talk about, I'm getting to talk about it.
Cool. I'm down. That's great. I appreciate that so much. I really do. Like I said, I'm not sure when this is going to end, but I guess we've pretty much gone over everything with punching, I think, as far as, like I said, I don't think there's anything we didn't cover. If there is, we'll go over it on another video. But
we can do
there you go.
Punching in depth or something.
Yeah, there you go. But I'm gonna I guess we'll call it here. This is where I'm always kind of like, I never know how to like end the video because I'm never just like, okay, bye. Like I don't do that. Yeah, right. But yeah. I had a great time. We'll have to do it next time. I don't know, always the classic lines there.
It's so formal all of a sudden.
I know, gosh. So it just made it so awkward now.
Yeah, right? Like, thanks, Jay. Yeah, appreciate it.
And bye.
Yeah.
If you watch
high five, like let's do a little group. Like
I swear it's some of the meetings, like when I'm sitting here doing it, and then we get to a certain point, and I feel like anybody who's watching like can see me just be like, okay, I don't know how to end it well because we go over it, and it's I can talk forever about fishing, especially like, and I try to highlight certain things with my video. And if we start going off topic, it's just I'm ADHD, so I can go off topic a million times.
Yeah, but that's good though, because then you get into a lot of different stuff with content and that, and that's what I think is fun with this. You kind of go in any direction, and oftentimes you stumble across sort of things like I'll say something, it'll trigger you, it triggers me back, and then all of a sudden we're talking about something we're super interested in, but was never on the itinerary.
Right. Oh, I don't ever, and that's the cool thing about what I like about doing these is I don't have like a script or a points or anything like that. I literally just start spitballing it. So like I'll sit here and we'll be talking about something and I'll be like, okay, what can I talk about? What can I ask? So I try to keep it real fresh and raw on that one too, just because like you said, it's endless and I don't want to set something up and have like a plan and then not go down another rabbit hole that's probably could be, totally necessary to go down and relevant, So I enjoy that part
too. If you template that shit, it feels so forced and
I don't like that.
Literally, like that's what network TV is for. Like,
right. You need a script. It's not for me. That's just not how I like to do it. I sound too robotic too. Like I feel like you can almost tell the difference between how someone speaks when they're talking from a script or even from just like bullet points because they're like, okay, let me cover this point.
Well, and YouTube has done that. Like the bullshit, in my opinion, most people are stupid. Like that's just reality. But literally, the ability for people to read bullshit now has increased exponentially.
Oh yeah,
super cool because like they can pick up on all this fake crap. Like it's amazing. But I think that's a good thing. It's a positive.
Right. Makes you it keeps the real.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate that too for sure. But I am gonna end it here now. I do
Cool.
I do appreciate everything, and we will do it again. We'll figure it out. I'll shoot you a text and we'll get it all planned out. And I'll let you know when this is dropping too, because I have a couple other beforehand, and I do them on Thursdays. So
Very
I'll
cool.
give you a heads up when it's dropping.
Awesome. I will try to get it shared, but I appreciate you having me on in that.
Oh, of course. No, I appreciate it. Truly.
I'll try not to be late next time.
It's okay. Nobody knows you were late because this is a pre-recording. So you just gave it all away. I told you we keep it raw.
Get a little timer, click clock, just waiting on balls, you know.
That's okay. I have it earlier when your camera went out of focus. I was recording that. So I'm gonna put that in there too. And then when you come back.
I love it. Yeah. And then put a bunch of bleeps in there, like censor bleeps, you know. Right.
Like, is that real? Did he cuss there? Did he really? I have to. That'd be funny.
That would be fun. I would highly enjoy that.
And then anybody who gets to this point is going to be like, "So was he cussing?"
Yeah. What happened? Oh, that's good shit.
I've had a good time tonight, man. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it.
We'll talk soon, okay?
Yeah, you got my number in that. Feel free to hit me up if you need anything. All right.
Definitely, man. I'll see you later, okay?
All right, Jay. Later, dude.
All right, bye.
All right, y'all. I'm going to leave you there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Mikey, man, I really appreciate you joining me tonight. Guys, like I keep telling you, this stuff is just great. All these great guests that I'm having on. I'm learning so much. Flipping and pitching, man, that really had me thinking. I'm going to have to definitely try that with this pre-spawn and things like that. But yeah, that really got me thinking a lot tonight. So Mikey, I appreciate it. We're going to have to do it again. I say that all the time, and I mean it every time. It's been great so far with this Talkin' Tackle, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave me some comments. Drop a like. Drop a comment. Go ahead, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And you guys know how it goes, right? We are out there fishing, and we are out there catching, and we are out there not realizing that Mikey Balls is just supposed to be a funny name and totally messed up there in the beginning. It's all good. No complaints.
Here we are again, guys, to another Talkin' Tackle, and tonight our guest that we have is Mr. Mikey. Is it Balls?
Wow, really? That's the part you're gonna focus on?
I know. I'm sorry. It's okay. I have one of those weird last names. You know, a lot of people think my last name is Sink, and it's Sinky. So I always try to like respectfully get it right.
Actually, I'll tell you this. That's actually not my last name.
See, I didn't know that. I wondered, and I was like, am I really? I honestly sat here and I was like, am I gonna make kind of a fool of myself if I, ask about it? I thought about that.
Dude, if my name was Balls, I would have been like heckled as a child.
I thought.
You know what?